Do you find it extremely hard to transition to a new diet, a new lifestyle, which would be much more conducive to your health and overall well-being? Because every time you set this goal, you build the castles in your mind, it sounds so easy on paper. I'll make this transition to a plant-based lifestyle. I'll consume only whole foods. But before you know it, these processed foods, they find their way back into your diet and you've fallen off the path. And at that stage, many people feel like it's just not for me. I just can't do without these foods. And they just gravitate back into their old habits. Sometimes it happens within a few days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, and sometimes even after years, you find yourself going back to those old habits. Now, I'm no stranger to having fallen off this path. I've fallen off so many times when I set goals to transition to a new diet. So in today's video, I want to share with you a couple of strategies that can hopefully help to make these transitions to a healthier lifestyle much more sustainable over the long term. So hopefully in this video, I'll share with you a couple of nuggets that you can implement if you're struggling to stick onto the diet protocol or the lifestyle protocol that you've adopted for your life. So let's get right into it. So, number one thing that is probably the most important, and that is to remember why. Why are you wanting to adopt this new diet, this new lifestyle? What was that reason that made you build that castle within your mind, that made you believe that this diet protocol will provide you what that ultimate sense of health and well-being that you so much desire? It's having that strong why and constantly revisiting it that can help to keep you on this path. Oftentimes they say it takes just 21 days to build a new habit, and if you can just get over that 21 days, then you can help to establish an entirely new habit. So finding that why and keeping that why constantly on your mind can help you prevent those sabotaging thoughts from getting the better of you. Many times, once we go on to these dietary protocols and we find ourselves succumbing to those processed foods that we used to love, we often forget our why at that time, and we sink into our old patterns, consuming those processed foods and forgetting the reason for adopting this certain dietary protocol. And if the why is weak, most likely it will not be able to sustain you on this new path, on this new dietary protocol that you've set for yourself. So it's really important that we establish a really strong why. And oftentimes it helps to constantly remind yourself of all the toxicity that is within these processed foods. Sometimes we end up making compromises because our mind tries to sabotage us from our new diets by convincing ourselves that these certain processed foods are not that bad. However, like I've said in many of my previous videos, we are completely oblivious of the processes behind the scenes to get the product into the state when we pick it up from the store shelves. And because we don't have that awareness and understanding of what it took to get that product there in that specific condition, what ingredients were added to it, the amount of toxicity that that product has been exposed to, we often make unaware decisions whenever we consume processed foods. And it's about time we start to recognize this. So reminding ourselves of all these factors can help to strengthen that why we are adopting the certain dietary protocol. Number two, probably another very important strategy that can help to keep you on track, and that is not being too hard on yourself. Many a times we fail on this path or fall off this bandwagon, but it's not about labeling it as failure. It's not about giving up at the first sign of failure. It's about recognizing that I'm human, I make errors, and I can try again, and allowing myself that opportunity to reset and try again. And many times it makes us feel like not wanting to continue down this path, because what's the point if I'm constantly neglecting on this goal, if I'm constantly falling back, why not just give it up and say that it's not for me? However, this is something I've had to grapple with for many years when I was trying to make this transition to sticking to mostly whole foods, is to not be hard on myself, to allow myself to fail, but to every time I fail, to constantly get up and try again, to keep at it, because not all of us may have that motivation or that discipline and consistency to be a purist on the spot. We may have those occasional times when we fail, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've given up on this goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that this goal is not for us, that this diet protocol would not be something that would be achievable for us specifically, because we don't have that discipline and that consistency to stick onto it like a purist. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to fail. I'm not perfect, and many people aren't perfect either when it comes to sticking on these diets. And it's okay if you fail. Just know that you can get up and try as many times as you can. And even if it gets to the stage where you find yourself constantly cheating, there are other strategies. As long as you keep it in your mind and you keep trying, eventually you'll make that breakthrough. Because this was something that I had to grapple with for so many years, where I constantly failed, but kept getting up and trying again. And sometimes that's just the process that's required in our life, to just stick onto it and use some of these strategies to help make this transition more permanent in your life. Number 3, let's talk about substitutes. Many times we like a certain type of processed food, and we find it really hard to do without it. It's almost like if you're addicted to a certain substance, your mind will constantly gravitate to it. You may be able to get off it for a day, maybe 2, and then eventually you find yourself just gravitating to that same food or that same item of addiction. So what can we do in these types of scenarios? The best is to find a suitable substitute, something that can be almost similar but much more healthier, something you prepare yourself to replace it. So for example, if you're someone like me and you love that crunchy taste of corn chips, that it's fried in these toxic oils, why not create your own version of it? Maybe take some fresh sweet potatoes and dice them up or slice them in very thin slices and put it in an air fryer without any oil. It might not taste exactly the same, however, it can help as a substitute to help get you over those addictive foods that we buy from the stores. So find those suitable substitutes. You'll find YouTube has so many healthier alternatives for many of the conventional products that we eat. If you just take the time to search for it, and yes, it will require additional effort. However, these substitutes can help make the transition. Sometimes it's just a matter of selecting a product, if you don't have time, that is prepared in a much more cleaner way, and slowly transitioning to much more whole foods over the period of time, but using certain substitutes to help you get away from much more toxic versions of foods. And hopefully that will help in this process of making this transition. The next important strategy that can be very helpful if you find yourself just so highly addicted to these foods is to make sure that you never have them around. Don't even walk to the grocery aisle that has those products, because it's going to tempt you to want to pick up those products and stock them in your house. Try and eliminate them from your house completely. Don't have them around, anywhere reachable. Don't go to any stores that you're going to find those products and they're going to tempt you to want to buy it. If you have to visit the store, don't visit the aisles that have those products, because it will tempt you to want to buy those processed packaged foods that will get you off your diet, and before you know it, you're back down your old path. So don't keep them around. Don't stock up on them. Just try and get it out. If you need to donate those foods, donate it. Make sure they're not within reach. That can help, because in that moment when your mind just goes topsy-turvy and you start constantly thinking about these addictive foods as a way to overcome that moment of weakness, if it's not around, eventually that desire will pass. If you just allow yourself enough time, you don't have it readily available, and you don't force yourself to get out of your home and go and purchase that product, you'll get over that desire. It will leave you eventually, if provided you don't have it anywhere within reach. The next, probably the most important strategy, and this one is probably the ultimate strategy to help you stick onto or transition to a new, healthier lifestyle, new diet, and that is bringing in the spiritual element. Many people forget this. Many people will talk about all these conventional approaches, some of the items that I've mentioned earlier, but they forget about the spiritual element. If you're not bringing in higher and divine into this process, you're not inviting that presence of God to help you transition to this diet, it's almost like it's going to be futile. And many of us that don't have that divine intervention to help us stick onto these diets, these protocols, it ends up being a failure because we don't have that spiritual element to keep us onto these diets. So that's something that's just so important when it comes to sticking onto diets, is bringing in that element of divinity. So whomever you have that spiritual affinity to, whoever it is that is the deity that you pray to, that you have faith in, call in for that presence of that divinity to help guide you through this process, to help keep you on this path so that you can co-create this transition to a healthier version of you with that presence of divinity within your life. And this is, I cannot stress how important this aspect is, because sometimes we'll stick onto these new diets for a couple of years, but without that element of divinity, we will find that we'll fall off this path. And before we know it, we're back into those old habits. So this is probably one of the most important parts or pieces of advice that I can leave with you, is to bring in that spiritual element into this transition process to help you catalyze the shift into a healthier version of you. So hopefully all these strategies can help you cement this path to a much more healthier lifestyle and not find yourself gravitating back to these toxic old diets that are really at the root of many of our chronic health illnesses that we are suffering from today. And by adopting this more healthier lifestyles, practices, implementing these tips that I've shared with you in this video, we can hopefully bring in that sense of health and vibrancy within our lives, especially for ourselves and future generations, because a number of our young ones are taking inspiration from you. And by you adopting this healthier lifestyle, you're not just doing it for yourself, you're inspiring others as well to go on the same path and get off a number of these toxic products that we are consuming that are just so detrimental to our overall health and wellness. So as always, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any comments, drop it down in the comment section below. And with that, I'll see you in my next video.